We are out here. We are live. Are you ready?
Ready.
You're ready. Okay, I didn't hear you. You ready? Okay,
Ready.
fantastic. All right, so I love to start every Tipsy Tuesday with the following. I like to make sure for new followers, new joiners, that they understand that Tipsy Tuesday is not that kind of tipsy. Okay, this is all about tips to help you elevate, level up, take away things that you can apply to your day to day life. And I love to start with my little jingle that has become a hit. And it goes, "Hey, y'all, it's Ayris, and it's Tuesday. So that means it's time for what? Another Tipsy Tuesday." Now, usually, Gwen, the guests join in. So now you got to join in on the tip. Are you ready? Okay.
Tipsy,
Tipsy
tipsy
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Right. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so people are going to start trickling in. But we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ayris, for having me. I'm so excited. I definitely appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate having you. So let me set a little bit of context. First and foremost, so let me start with this. Why I am extremely excited to have you here, because it was literally a year ago this month that I started Tipsy Tuesday. And it was something that was just like baking in my head for years. And one of the things that I love to kind of delve into and look at and examine are the way that we go about making decisions, how we hold off on doing things. And I think it's going to be so relevant to our conversation today because we're talking about retirement, we're talking about our future, we're talking about investing in our number one asset, and that's ourselves. And so I am hoping that when we finish this conversation today, that people understand, how they can make better decisions, how they can overcome any fears or frustrations that they may have as it relates to retirement and planning for their future, that they understand it's a practice, it's a discipline, and really it is the best investment that you can make in yourself. And so, with that, I want to say, hello, Soror.
Hi, Sore Ayris. I'm so excited.
Yay.
And guess what? Congratulations on the 1 year anniversary. I'm telling you, that's a huge milestone. And I am so happy for you. And I'm glad I could be here on the 1 year anniversary. That is so cool. I love that because again, sustaining past one day in some environments sometimes is a blessing in and of itself. Okay. So
Particularly in this environment. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now in this environment. And I
yes.
think, again, we're going to delve into that. But I know who you are. I would love for you to share who you are with those who will be tuning in. And I said earlier that you cover so many things that are just passion areas for me. Anyone who knows me, my man says when I talk about money that my voice changes. He's like, you talk differently when you talk about money. And I'm like, well, what do I sound like? You've got the creative side because you have the decorating, interior decorating, but you also bring this human resource lens to this work. And, bringing all of that together, I think is so important. And it gives you such a unique advantage and edge. So, you want to share a bit more about who you are and how you got here?
Yes, thank you so much, Eris. I definitely appreciate it. We were just catching up just a little bit just before we went live. And a number of people now know because I think I had to get away from the stigma. But long story short, a lot of people know me from my 20 plus years in HR and recruitment. And I was out on the East Coast. I'm now based in the South. So I'm in the dirty South, Mississippi. And with that transition, again, COVID happened. And then, of course, that set a different environment for HR professionals that had to be in the office. We became a lot of times remote. So 20 plus years in HR and recruitment, working on the government sector side. And then I got burned out with that. And then I wanted to transition over into private sector because I thought, oh, we would have more autonomy. And then that was also a learning curve. But I did fairly well in the short amount of time that I was on that side. So transition over there. And then life happens. Transition into a layoff, 20 plus years. And then now all the counseling and guidance that I had been given so many folks, so many job seekers, I then had to turn that mic and that camera inward towards myself to say, Gwen, what do you want now? Where's your next posturing going to be for the life that you want to create, that you're within that realm, that 10 to 15 years of retirement? And so I actually started out as a client with 300 Financial Group. I was a client with them. And with that, I truly started getting all of the wools, the shades, everything was going up, because I became super educated and super focused on how you
Yes.
plan for retirement and all the things that it ties into, right, for us, as to either why we don't start or why some of us are hyper vigilant on making sure that our futures are secured. But in that's what helped me to blossom into this field. And I am loving it, because all the
Mm-hmm.
things that I had to sit and ask myself, this opportunity allowed me to take that road there. So I'm truly grateful for that. And then again, my creative side, like you mentioned, the decorating, I still manage both. So I'm doing the things that are important, that are relevant, that are necessary. And so I just want to keep doing that and hopefully provide an avenue and a light for folks to continue on their journeys, whatever that may look like for them.
I love that. So not only are you going to give us practical and professional guidance and feedback, but this is also a personal perspective that you can really relate to those who are going to be joining us today. And the reason I think about in my career or in my life, and one of the reasons why I even started this is that I get a lot of questions from people who see certain things about maybe what I've accomplished professionally, or they hear me speaking about, this kind of diligence that I have with regards to wanting to invest and save and thinking about my future. They see me and they think I'm so disciplined because I go to the gym. There's all these perspectives, right, that people have when they look at you. And one of the things that I've really been navigating and having to delve through lately is right what you talked about, is that I have so many friends, I have so many peers who have done all the right things. And I'm using the air quotes, gotten the degrees, they've gotten the jobs, they've done the certifications, they're trying to manage life, and they are still feeling a lot of financial pressure. People are being laid off at record numbers. They're still chronically, I say chronically 6 months or more of unemployment. And so when you start thinking about retirement, it's like, wait a minute. I am just trying to first and foremost make sure that today is taken care of. You want me to think about something that may or may not even happen 10, 15, 20 years from now. So before we start delving into, because I have like 6 pages of questions, I could talk about money all day long, okay? But we only have about an hour. So
Okay.
here's what I want to say. I think, and this is just me, that most people don't necessarily have a money problem. They really have a decision situation and a values alignment situation. I'm trying to say it in a nice way, right? Because if someone says, "Oh, I just need to make more money," and I say, "You show me how you spend a little, I'll show you how you spend a lot." And so when we think about just setting the tone, right? If people don't learn anything else from today's conversation, what is one thing that they could start doing differently tomorrow that could improve their financial outcome?
From my perspective, and with the clients that I work with, and even some of our own personal fears, is to get very real and radical about where your numbers are. It's important for us to dive in and take a look, not continue to just, I'll get to it later. Very similar to sometimes how certain people approach estate planning. You have all the things in place, you have the property, and then you have, siblings and beneficiaries, offspring, etc. And then at some point you have to sit down and say, okay, if something were to happen to me tomorrow or today, how will I leave my family? How will those things that are attached to me be impacted? How will I be impacted? And so it's about sitting down and getting very real with where your situation is, and to, even though it seems so far off, to think about where is it that you want, what do you want for your life trajectory? What do you want for like your hopes and dreams? What are your goals? Is it just literally for you to work every day, get the paycheck, and just manage the basic things? Or are you dreaming bigger than that in terms of, I want to be able to, and then you fill in that blank. I want to be able to, when I'm retired, is that if I travel somewhere, it doesn't have to be just for a weekend. I can holiday for a month in Saint Tropez and not have to worry about, are my basic necessities going to be covered? So if our audience today takes away nothing else from this conversation, is to sit down and begin the process of looking at what you have now. What is my net worth? And again, it's going to be different for everybody because it's going to be based upon what generation you are in. Everyone is not supposed to be at the same place. Everyone is not supposed to have the same plan. It is not a one size fits all approach to you looking at that. So the biggest takeaway is to start today to really look at your numbers, your income, your lifestyle. What is your end goal when you decide to hang it up?
I love that. Get real and radical. That's
Real and radical.
get real.
R&R, not just
Art,
rest and relaxation. R&R, real and radical.
that's a
Ayris,
whole
I love you.
different kind of R&R right there. I love that. And because what you laid out really requires us to pause and get into it. And to your point, we think retirement is so far down the line. And I'm gonna say this, it comes fast. I looked up, I was like, wait, how old am I? And why am I here? But we'll talk about that later. And so, and that really all of this work, like everything takes us to stop life for a moment so that we can focus on life. And there's always all these distractions. And so we can continue to kick things down the road, and then we'll look up and we'll be in our 40s, we'll be in our 50s, and we don't have a plan and we have nothing that's saved or set aside. So
That is
get real
true. And, and
radical.
and that's part of the reason why you get all these special concessions when you're 10 years out, is because the reality is that when it's most beneficial for us to start planning that, when the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, when they say, oh, well, I'm not even remotely thinking. I was in that boat too. It's like, you started talking to me about retirement when I was 22, 23. I was like living my best life, trying to,
Right.
make up for the fact that I didn't get a gap year before I went to college. So, but again, entering the real workspace as well. But the reality is that truly when you start in your 20s and 30s, time truly does become your benefit. It's your
Yeah.
main asset. And that's the thing that I want to drive home with that particular age group, the 20 and 30 years old. If you just start with a little and be disciplined and consistent, it will
Yes.
save you so much grief when you
Yes.
get to that 40 and 50 year mark. And that's what you don't see now. That's why you have the aunties and your parents like on you saying, hey, just start. Like when you get that good job and it has a 401k or 403b, what have you, even if it's just a small amount, put something away. Learn to pay yourself first. And I
Yes.
was guilty of that. I was so wrapped up in, oh, I need to pay my bills and everything needs to, have a zeroed out, and not understanding that you're an asset too. You need to treat yourself like you need income as well, and you do, to sustain not just the things around you, but yourself as well. And so that becomes very important. And so that's the thing that I love working with that age group too, because I some people now, I think are being more intentional than that, than like during my heyday, where they
Hmm.
just literally focused on like safe saving for
Yeah.
sure.
Save savings or even just making money. And I kind of want to
Mhm.
talk about that. Like you think about an income. Like, I can't wait until I make, or I need to make X amount. I need to make
Yeah.
X amount. And then you get to that X amount and you still haven't changed your practice or your habits. to start making those investments. And so, what do you advise or counsel, or how do you talk to people to get them to literally start to change those habits and make decisions that allow for them to prepare for their future? I just really want
Absolutely.
people to understand the urgency. Like, I really want people to understand the urgency and importance of this conversation. I sometimes get scared thinking about the future. Like, it is expensive today, and it only continues to get more expensive. I look at so many of my seasoned relatives and friends, and I'm going, how are they surviving? Like, I mean, they're living off of some retirement and
Mhm.
okay, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let you answer the question. How do you work with people to start to break those habits and have that shift?
Yeah, that's a really good start, Eris. It truly is, because I think the important part is to first understand the difference, right? The difference between income and being financially prepared. Okay.
Yes.
And so the easiest way, and I am queen of always trying to oversimplify things, because I think part of some of our issues, especially in some cultures, not just ours, but even in others, is that culturally we have to trust that what the other person on the other side is saying to us is in our best interest, right?
Yes.
So as it relates to the difference, understanding the difference first of income and then being financially prepared. So income is the rate that we accept for an exchange of our time, either a service that we're going to provide or a good, to say if we're a seller, right? So with the financial planning aspect of it, so the income is right here, right now. I'm exchanging my time to get paid a certain rate. When it comes to financial preparedness, if that income stops, can my lifestyle sustain without it? What am I putting in place that when this income stops, either because of life things, age, health issues, just mental health stuff sometimes, certain things that can derail us from being able to secure the bag, so to speak, and really earn the income, how will that help us? How does it sustain our lifestyle? How does it sustain keeping the lights on and staying in the house and all the things that we have purchased with said income? And so the financial preparedness is us taking a look at what have we put stock into, okay? Not just the income that we get and we let it sit in the bank, or we have a savings account that, has a couple of thousand or whatever our goal is. But when this income stops, if the check stops, how does that impact my lifestyle? And that's what starting the process of financial planning really becomes about. It's you taking a look at that long term. And again, I think Susie Orman during my heyday kind of captured it best, because she really talked about the relationship that you have with money. And I know people are going to, the relationship that a person generally has with money is not always a linear walk. And there are psychological or emotional, sometimes barriers that prevent us from becoming financially prepared, because we just focus on the here and now, right? And especially in this climate, because if you're fortunate enough to have a regular steady check, it's like you better be grateful, keep your head down, and move forward with that. But then there's so much more to it than that. And so getting people to understand that your income does not equate to your financial preparedness. And nowadays, when you're looking at, especially the way that the landscape has changed, right? You have the influencer community, you have young people that are making ridiculous amounts of money very early on, but who do not have the knowledge of what to do with said money. Because again,
Yeah.
we're focused on that instant gratification, the here and now. Let me get the big house, let me do. And when you look at, again, society wise, we didn't necessarily have that reflector coming back to us day to day. We had our neighbors who looked very similar to us. There wasn't this external force, right, that we could look to say, oh, wow, and start putting all of these sometimes unrealistic expectations on ourselves, or making our goals what we see expressed externally, versus us looking at what is it that I need? How do I want my life to look? How do I want to live? So bringing it back to us. So I think Susie Orman did a very good job of breaking down how you behave with your money is tied to your emotional connection to it. And it
Mm.
starts very early on, very
Okay.
early on.
So, just say that again. How you relate to
To
your
your
money.
money is a is a direct result of how you're emotionally tied to it. And what I
Yes.
mean by that, so think
Mm,
about the folks who lived during the Great Depression and the big crash of 1929. When you talk to those folks, like if they're, still living and surviving in this economic environment, they are savers, they are planners. They don't want to live, they don't want to go because they remember that emotional disconnect of the lack, didn't have, couldn't get. And so no one would want to go through that and then say, you know what, I'm okay with going through that again. You change, it causes you to change how you act, how you react to certain things. And so you become more proactive. And like I said, Susie did a very good job, in my opinion. I love her. I know that was one of Oprah's people, but she did like to really understand where it comes from, because people just feel like, okay, I get this money and you're supposed to know what to do with it. You have to be educated on it. Your cultural and your values have to align with how you see yourself with said money. Are you deserving of it? Some people, that's probably why they constantly get in these holes and get in financial troubles, because if you really studied it, and I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, so I'll bring it back, but there's probably a serious emotional disconnect to say, I really don't deserve this, or I'm not
mm,
sure how long it's going to last. And so you feel like you have to consume right away. So then there's a lack of planning, depending upon your household structure, how it was brought up. In my family, my dad was a saver. My mom, she managed both. She could do them both. But my dad was the one that was an avid saver. I initially went off on a tangent until I really understood how money works for you and how it's
yes.
supposed to work for you. And it's not supposed to be a stressor, whether you have it or whether you don't. And see,
Mm,
that's the piece of it. Which side of the spectrum do you really want to be on with that? And so
mm,
those are the things that we have to take a look at and ask ourselves, as it relates to our emotional connection to money.
mm. I'm quiet because that hit me so hard. I recently, or a couple years ago, was doing a keynote for a Women's History Month event. And I was trying to think about what it was that I wanted to talk about that was a little new, better, different for that audience. And as I was kind of going through my life trajectory and just looking back, I thought about growing up, and my dad, he would make this comment to me, which I thought at the time was like a joke, but now I'm realizing it really wasn't a joke. And so say I would ask for something, can I get
Mhm.
this toy, or can I get, and he'd go, a little bit, we one paycheck away from being homeless. And I
Mm.
would hear it, but it didn't hit me, like it just kind
Yeah.
of rolled off. And I started thinking about the way that I was always trying to make sure I had access to money. And I mean, from a young age, I started babysitting at like 10. I was in a little rap group at 13. I was working at retail. So I was doing all the things to make sure that I'm always bringing in money.
Money. Hmm.
And when I think about where I am today financially, I know that I am very blessed. I've done well, but some days I still feel like I haven't done well enough because I don't know
Hmm.
what the end goal is. I love you. Like, what's my number? I thought I knew my number, but the way the market keeps changing, I don't know what my number is. And I think once I get my number, I will feel maybe more comfortable. It's something I'm definitely trying to work on, is this relationship that I have with money, where people might say, well, you have a great relationship with money because you're not in debt or you're not stressed. It's like, I'm not
Hmm.
those things because I'm terrified to spend money.
Yeah.
Like, I am terrified, I
Yeah.
really am. I thought about it, it all came back to that childhood of hearing. Subconsciously, this had an impact on me. And
Yeah.
so, and then my mom, she's always been a great manager of money, but she's also been one who sometimes would use credit cards. And one of the things she said, which, I love it, but also it's like, oh, it would make me nervous when she's had to be in those bridge moments. She would say, well, thank God I had the credit cards to get me through. Now, she didn't go into
Mhm.
credit card debt and any of that, but there would be those moments, right, where
Right.
financially you might be strapped, and that's how it starts with people, and then it sometimes gets
Mhm.
out of hand and it compounds. But I also do that.
Mhm.
I never wanted to use credit cards because I just didn't like the thought of owing money to other people, or just that it could be something that could turn it. So I've always been someone who was just like, what how do you manage this money? Like, what do you do with this? So I'm a great saver. I do some investing, but I'm still not very clear, And I think that that's
Mhm.
a situation that a lot of us find ourselves in. It's You're not clear. You do have these emotional relationships with money. And when you think about retirement, oh, further down, and or when you think about immediacy, I just can't afford to make that additional investment into my retirement and savings, right? I can't afford it, but you can
Yeah.
afford the happy hours, you can afford the brunch, you can afford the hair, right? You can afford these other things. And so for
Mhm.
me, I would say, again, it goes back to the decisions that we make and the values that we decide to place, which is really saying, what do you value about yourself? I loved how you touched on some of us may not even feel deserving of some of the financial gains that we have. Some of us may not feel deserving to pay ourselves or take care of ourselves first, or see that as taking care of ourselves first, versus, well, I'm
Mhm.
gonna go to the spa today, or I'm gonna go buy this new. No, it's like, do you want to be 70 and trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills and not
And
having.
unfortunately, it's one of those realities that are there. I have clients that come all the time. And that's why I said back at the beginning, the biggest takeaway is to start looking at it, not assuming that we have tomorrow. Because again, we've all known people who
Yes.
have had tragic loss, who thought they had time. And it's not meant to be a scare tactic, but it's
Mhm.
meant to be informational. It's meant to be intentional and purposeful in terms of the life that you want to live. You know, it's we know that either when we go to school, we get educated, we decide, okay, either I'm going to continue that education because this is what's going to help me propel towards my goals in my future, to get the high paying job, to get the type of career that I want. And so we're intentional when it comes to that. Everything except money. And unless you grew up in a household where you learned that early on, I love the clients and the families that come and they're talking, they have their young children and they already are teaching them about how to manage money. They have their own accounts that they have to manage. I absolutely love that. I think more of that needs to occur, especially with the younger generation, but
Mhm.
also to take an educational approach, not a one size fits all. And I think as people start to discover, okay, well, what's going to work for me? What's my number? What's ideal? When you sit with somebody like me, who is I am what I refer to, and I self-tag this, is I'm the eliminator of what ifs. Okay. I
So
am the
what if-
eliminator of the what ifs. My whole focus is not to help you get rich quick. That is not what I do. I would love to, because I would start with myself first. In
Mhm.
that sense, you know. But what I mean by that is to make sure that you have what you need when you need it. Because you
Ooh.
can have a bank account and a pot full of money, but if it's not appropriately allocated for the life things that happen, it can be wiped out overnight. So the person who has, and again, I have clients that have come to me, their bank accounts are sitting great, but ask me if they have life insurance, have not invested in it. And if something were to happen tomorrow, even if it's two or three out of your 5-person household, and you had to pay that expense out of pocket, that money that is sitting over there, you would have to use it. And then how quickly can you rebound from what you've had to pull in order to cover this expense? And that's when we start moving into being intentional with the financial planning aspect of it. That's why you'll have someone like me who's going to ask you all these questions. Like when I tell people, because it instantly, what most folks think what you do is they think that you just sell insurance, and that's not it. I look at your total picture. So you can't just come to me and say, you know what, I think I need a end of life. I need to look at that. Or I think I need a life insurance policy. We're going to
Uh-huh.
talk about everything. Do you understand
Right.
me? Everything. Because if what you need, like, again, people hear the terminology, but they don't understand when it's
Yes.
used, why, when it's beneficial, the timing of said. Again, it's not a one size fits all approach. It should be individualized to you, based on what your goals are. When you get in retirement, the level of some people not understanding what they've been doing for 20 and 30 years because someone just told them to do it. And we've all been guilty of it to a certain extent, right? When we first start out, they tell you, what's the first thing they tell you when you work for a company? Make sure you invest into the employer contribution plan,
Okay.
especially if you're working for, yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you're working for an employer where you don't know, where you didn't start way back then, where you get a pension, right? So we're responsible for our own retirement a lot of times, right? So unless you work for the government where you can get a pension, but then they also have it set aside where you can actually contribute to your own retirement as well. Because what? Just because you get the lifetime pension doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be enough. And what's going to be your situation when you go draw that pension? Is it enough to sustain your lifestyle? Because when you think about it, there's a large segment, our baby boomers folks, they should be coming off of having those large expenses in retirement. So say the mortgages, etc. But what we're finding is a lot of them are starting out later in life with those major purchases. So what's going to happen? That's going to, that debt can continue, excuse me,
Yes.
into retirement. And so
Right.
we have to account for that. So it's not like you're going to go and work overtime to make that extra. When you're on that pension, that's what it is. It's set. It oftentimes does not account for cost of living, or you may not get it every year, just depending upon the state of the funds at the time. So there's a number of things that we have to look at with that. And so as I'm sitting down with clients, I am going through all those questions. And I know they're probably like, my gosh, this is so intense. It should be, because
Yes.
this is the number one thing that's going to impact you. Not buying the house, not necessarily the wedding, unless you went from being poor to marrying endless wealth, then maybe. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to be what you are doing with your income during your working years to set you up
Yeah.
for your retirement years.
Yeah, that was, so I was actually going to ask, what was the biggest, well, one, I would love for people to even just take a moment and ask themselves, do they feel right now that they are prepared financially for their retirement? And if they're not, are you ready to start getting prepared today? And so take a moment to reflect on that. You can drop your thoughts and your comments in the chat. But I want to know or hear from you what you think is currently like one of the biggest, I would say, misconceptions, or maybe one of the biggest mistakes that people who make high earning incomes are doing right now as it relates to their retirement, but also for people who may not be making a lot right now. Like, we focus so much, we think, oh, you got to have, again, all this money in order for certain things to happen. But, the majority of America is right there in the middle and below. And
Right.
so, what are some mistakes that we're making as we're thinking about our future and investing in ourselves?
Well, I'll start with the high earners, because I have some clients that were in that boat and we got them right.
Mm-hmm.
The high earners feel like they have time to make it up. And
Mm.
again, there are certain things that are in place when you work for an employer. When you work for yourself, that becomes a different story.
Mm.
So one of the biggest things is that they feel like they have time to make it up. So if I didn't start, and let me be very clear in saying this, it is never too late for you to start your retirement unless you start planning towards it, unless you're 90 years old and haven't started from day one, which the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. But my point is that you can always start to look and see and assess where you are to start making changes that would align with what you want your end goal to be. So with high earners, they feel like, because again, they're focusing on the high income that they're making now and equating that with their financial security in the future.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's not always a direct relationship. In fact, 90% of the times it is not. Because again, what happens, the more we make, the more we tend to spend. And what happens is that generally outpaces our financial planning efforts, say savings, say diversification into the right forms of income during our retirement so that we're not hit with a hefty tax bill. That's the other thing that
Mm,
I'm not going to say
yeah.
upsets me, but I'm going to say just my little hairs on my ears just stick up, because the number of folks, again, that's the one beautiful thing that I do love about being backed by 300 Financial Group, is that they take an educational approach, making sure that the clients that we serve understand what their money is doing, why
Yeah.
it's doing what it's doing. And sometimes we do have to remind them when we do like their periodic reviews, their annual reviews, and make sure that things are in alignment, that no major things have changed during the process. And that is to become acutely aware of what your goal should be, what it should be,
Yes.
how you are going to be impacted when you start withdrawing your income. Because a number of them feel like, I've had a number to say, oh, I didn't realize that when I started drawing my retirement funds through this defined contribution that it was going to get taxed. Hello, the government is waiting on his cut for sure. That's the reason that he gives us that great gift of playing catch up and putting in more, that 10 to 15 years prior to when you're getting ready to have to take it, because they are ready with their hands out. Like, I gave you 25, 30 years of tax deferred. Now it's
Yes.
time for you to pay. And they
Yes.
don't realize that, or they assume they're going to be in a lower tax bracket because they're in retirement income. In some instances, especially the ones who've been purposeful and who have been planning and looking at the things to do to make sure that they're going to be comfortable, that their lifestyle isn't going to change, or that they're going to have the lifestyle that they want into retirement. Those are the ones that have the tendency to look at, okay, we have to make sure we diversify so that all of my income sources are not being taxed at the highest level, because some people actually do better in retirement income than they do when they're working. There is that segment out there that they get more resources. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that their tax bracket goes down.
That's a whole word. Can you elaborate a little bit more on
Yeah, absolutely. So historically,
the taxes are killing me.
a number of people, again, so when you think about like our retirement, right, it was initially it was a one prong effect, two prong effect, excuse me. It was, you worked for a company and that company paid your pension, right, for the lifetime that you were still living after you put in retirement. And then Social Security was supposed to supplement that as well, right? Because pensions weren't in and of itself necessarily going to be enough without you at some point during your formal retirement, I should say, to not have to consider going back into the workforce, right? So you had your pension, your retirement income, and then Social Security. And then as we got into retirement, there was a shift. Man by the name of Ted Benner came up with the defined contribution plan, right? The 401s, the 403s, because what was happening? People were living longer in retirement. So the government said, hey, wait, the companies were saying, wait a minute now. These people are living 30 years, 40 years, sometimes 50 years into retirement. We can't afford that. So what happened? We shifted and they said, let's come up with another leg to that three-legged stool to help people to plan in retirement. So it became your pension, which some folks still get, Social Security, but now you have to contribute to your own and actively engage in planning your own retirement. That's what the defined contribution plans came into place. right? So we're going to give you a tax break now to encourage folks to contribute. Look, we're going to give you an incentive. And then some companies will even give you a match. Pay attention to the match. We always tell people, make sure you get that free money because that's what it is, right? And so that three-legged stool was intended to be more secure. But just to what we discussed earlier in the conversation with when we're in our 20s and 30s and we start entering into the workforce and we start making those great incomes, the last thing that a lot of us are thinking, our mindset is not geared towards, let me put away for the future. My mindset is geared towards, oh, I have to have the latest and the greatest. I'm being influenced. The influencers have all these lists that tell me all the things that I need to buy and support. And what do? We get nervous. FOMO. Oh my gosh, I'm not cool. I'm not hip. And it sounds so simplistic because it's this psychological thing that goes on with us. Again, relationship, emotional connection to money is what's going to drive us to what we do with said money, how we react with it. If we're going to spend like crazy, like there's no tomorrow, or are we going to squirrel away because we're not going to get caught slipping or in need or lifestyle changes, right? So again, when you look at the tax situation, all of those plans are designed to give you the tax breakdown. But then there's this other portion of what you can do with your money that allows you to balance all the income that you're going to get in retirement that will be taxed. And those are the things that we work with clients on to help them understand how to leverage the two, because that's where the diversification comes in. It's not just about, oh, I have my money in the stock market, but I'm in techs and I'm in cryptocurrencies and I'm in real estate, but it's still in the market and it's not guaranteed, because if that market crashed tomorrow and you're 5 years out or 1 year out, that's going to have you rethink some things. You're going to have to figure out, am I still going to be able to continue on? So again, what I attempt to do with clients is to help balance that. So you can have, I'm not saying not to be in the market, because people have made a mint, but understanding the tax ramifications off of what you make when you go to pull those resources out. And then do you have your income set up in other resources that will help balance that? Because there is such a thing as income, I'm going to say this, tax advantage that you can get where you're not paying taxes on the money that you pull out. And that's just a reality. And again, but those are not things that are highly stressed. And that's why we try to focus on making sure that our clients understand. That's why we ask all the questions about what is it that you want your retirement to look like. Some people are cool with just saying, hey, I just want to be able to live how I was living when I was when I had an income, a check that I worked for, even though I'm not working anymore and I'm just sitting back getting what collecting.
Okay, can we pause right there?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that y'all, this is about me, okay? So this is all about me today. I'm running my mouth. I'm just sitting here taking so many notes. You're answering literally every question I had. But oh my God, where was I going with that one? Oh Lord, I forgot. Wait, what was I about to ask? Okay, now I forgot because I just got so excited. But it's about the lifestyle. Okay.
Yes.
So one of the comments is that, we definitely don't talk about retirement enough in the community. And thank you, DeAndre, for sharing that, because we don't. And I mean, we talk about money. We barely talk about money. We're starting to talk about wealth building. We're starting to talk about things in the air quote community, but retirement and what that future planning looks like, not so much. And so even as you think about your number and you look at what you make right now at your prime, let's say, where do you base that number off of, right? That's what got me excited. Is it at your prime in your heyday when you're making, $7,500 a month, $30,000 a month, $50,000 a month? Or is it really back to the top of our conversation when you sit down and get real and radical about what your lifestyle needs to entail? You base your number off of that. I think that a lot of people probably are making the assumption that it's kind of based off of their current lifestyle. And I go, if you also are making strategic decisions along the way, you mentioned earlier, how people are having to buy homes later, right? And so if I bought my first home, and this is not against anyone, the market is making it extremely difficult. Um, at 35 or at 40, and I have a 30-year mortgage, and maybe I'm not making that extra payment a month to get it down faster, to pay it off faster. Maybe I didn't have 50% or equity from a previous home to buy it down. I might be carrying a mortgage of $700,000, 800. I
Mhm.
mean, in this market, $1 million, right? And now
Location,
location,
DCers,
right? All of
Marylanders,
it
Virginianers.
matters when you are like
Yes.
these are concessions that I want to continue to challenge people to think about and think through as they are building out this future for themselves. Because to the coast, the East Coast, the West Coast, give it up. You're not even in. Toya said, "I'm moving to Jackson." Okay, I'm moving to Curacao. I'm moving. I am moving. I am moving.
Panama City.
Panama, I love Portugal. Like these are real conversations for us to be thinking about. And I always say, like, I have lived my entire life way below my means. I don't deprive myself. If you follow me on social, I have a lovely life. I love it. I
Yes.
enjoy it. But Ayris is way below her means. I'm in the same house I bought as a capital city fellow, making a $40,000 stipend. I would like to move. I just don't want a $9,000 a month mortgage in the nation's capital. I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
when we think about our number and when we think about that future life, should people be thinking about a different type of what their life looks like at that point, or are they basing it off of now when they're going to brunch every Saturday or Sunday, or buying the latest iPhone, or I'm not buying
That's a
another phone
very
after
that's a good question. Those are the types of questions that you have to
my
ask
daughter said,
yourself.
"I'm coming with you." Yes, you are, baby girl.
Yes, we leave no one behind.
No one.
Those are the questions that you have to get real about. The number
Yes.
one question that I ask when I'm starting to work with clients and we're going through their information, and I ask them, what is your number? A lot of times, and I'm not expecting them to give me a number, right? Because it's going to be different for everybody, just depending upon where they were. And again, to our earlier points, it depends on, because life doesn't always move in a linear fashion, right? So you
Right.
can be on track doing all the things, and then something happens to derail, or you have to pivot, or you have to shift for a minute. And sometimes it may take a little bit longer. But that number and what you want for yourself in retirement is solely dependent upon the first thing, especially when it's sometimes difficult for someone to make that assessment of what that looks like. Some people will just randomly throw out numbers like they're close to retirement. And then when you ask them, okay, well, what do you need in retirement? What does your number look like? What do you want to have as far as income coming in each month? And they may say, oh, 5,000, 10,000. I'm like, okay, so where are you getting that from?
Right.
Where it should be coming from is looking at your expenses. What does it take for you to take care of your basic needs? And then when you're going into retirement, we're starting to look at what things are going to drop off. Most people are not going to go and buy a brand new car and have a 7-year car note right before retirement, because they know that their income is about to become steady and they don't want to have those big expenses or go and make the large purchase, right? What they're focusing on. So your number, what that should look like, is based on the lifestyle that you want to lead. And we ask all the questions. Hey, you want to pay your bills. We know that. I can see from the numbers and all the information that you've given me, this is what you need minimum just to be able to pay everything. Now let's talk about the reality of, are you going to want to take X number of vacations that are going to average this amount for this length of time? What do
Yes,
we
I am.
need to factor in on that? And that's the part where most people fall short. They end up not accounting for that because they feel like, oh, if I just have my bills covered, then I'll finagle and make do. And that's where the trouble gets in, because it's that finagling and making do that
Finagling.
we don't finagle do, that we fall short, that we don't plan for. I've had some clients that unfortunately have some of the things that they were planning on in their retirement future didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And so again, they've had to pivot, whether it was the loss of a child that they weren't expecting, obviously, things of that nature that will impact sometimes your ability to keep your income where it needs to be. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I mean when I say, and then, like I said, when some people look at, all the literature and the books and stuff that are out there, the different philosophies, the Dave Ramsey's, when you go and start looking at, and I have a number of people that follow him to a T, and it's a good start. It's a good
Uh-huh.
start to kickstart, but that's realistically not the destination. And I know
Mm.
I'm saying something that's probably controversial in saying that, because again, that philosophy has some fundamental flaws, especially in today's economic and societal
Mm.
environment, especially when it comes to, because again, you have your younger folks that sometimes are surpassing income levels of those that have been in the workforce for 30 years. So
Yes.
it flip flops.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we're coming up on time, and I told you I had 6 pages of questions, but
Did
you
you get through
covered a
all
lot.
of them?
I mean, you have been touching on so many of them. One though that I do want to hear your thoughts around is that I think oftentimes when people think about, even like you're using the term client, which wonderful, they are your clients. I hear client, and I'm just kind of put my outside hat on. I might go, whoa, is this expensive? You right? People always think that financial service. You're like, where's she going? Like, because you hear client and you're like, oh my god, can I afford this? Or I think I know, or I need like. So how does that work? Like, we need a part two. We're gonna get a part two. I do agree. Listen, I could talk about money all day, every day. So how does it work working with you? And the other piece is when you are trying to identify someone to work with regards to your finances, one, there's a lot of scammers.
Ooh,
I mean, it's so many scammers, and I think that this is one of those relationships, even more, for me, even more so than my doc. Like, I need to trust you. You know what I mean? So what does it mean to be a client? Like, and how do people get over the thought that financial, and I'm gonna say like advice or strategy or working with a certified safe money strategist isn't something that is going to cost them too much. Although I say not working with a financial advisor could actually cost you a lot more than an investment in your future.
no, very good point. And so when people say that, if they have that thought, my question back to that, or my rebuttal back to that, is expensive relative to what?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but to simplify it, I do complimentary, free, comprehensive, confidential analysis. Why? Because I am backed by a company, 300 Financial Group, that is what we call non-captive in the financial services industry, meaning that you don't have to come to me with $1 million minimum portfolio before I will talk with you or engage with you. We
Mm-hmm.
work with, and I particularly work with, working class folks who just want to have their retirement goals met, whether that's in your 20s and 30s getting started. That's even young children under, that's not even a year yet, where their parents are already looking at how to set
Mm-hmm.
up their futures, right? And so what I do, we are compensated. My compensation, how I make my do re mi, is through the companies that I get to work with, because I am considered a broker. And the beautiful part of that is I don't have to try to fit you into anything. I have to focus on, what are your goals? What is it that you need at the end of the day? And let me do the legwork of finding the best company that is an A-rated company, not just some fly-by-night shoddy, just popped up on the scene, has no historical data or history to support their business, that they are tied to an A-rated. I only focus on putting clients in A-rated companies. And so if you have a B or B plus plus plus, I don't want to talk to you. I need the A's. I keep my clients on the A game. Okay. And so when it comes to that, like I said, there is no cost for me to sit down with you and help you come up with a retirement plan that works for your goals. I will ask you a lot of questions. You will need to, there's no set starting place that you have to be. You just have to be open to the recommendations that I give to you so that you can get on the path that you want for your retirement future. And that's really the bulk of it, getting real and sitting down and taking action. That's the real crux of it. Because I mean, again, things that we're unsure of, we're fearful from, what do? We denial, we run from it. We don't want to address it. This is a time to address it. And especially in these economic times, it is so crucial that we do. And it's not, like I said, it's not too late. There are things that can help. A lot of times it's just reallocating what you're already doing so that it fits better, so that you can get the maximum return that you need when it's
Yeah.
time for you to start withdrawing.
There's two things you said. One was the confidential. I think, again, I'm just putting my other people hat on. There is a lot of concern that, when I come to you, like maybe I need to be at a certain level or a certain space. Like I don't want to be judged because maybe I've put money in X and you're like, girl, that is, I love Ramsey, but he will definitely tell you where you should not have he will make you think that you have done all the wrong things, or that I need to have a certain amount of money saved or certain amount of money already invested before I come and have a conversation. And some people just aren't there yet, but that's okay because you can get there. And the thing that you also said that I loved was about getting real, so I would continue to ask those who are joining us, how many of them feel that their current lifestyle is actually helping or hurting them as they think about their future financial preparedness. Again, I'm not saying to not have a good time. I'm not saying that yourself things and like eating, but an excessive amount of living can literally be the difference between how what your lifestyle is like in your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. We're living longer. And also, I think about, I don't want to be a financial burden on anyone else
Mm,
that's behind me, right? I have one child and I always mess with her. I can't wait till she makes it big and she's gonna take care of me. What? But at the end of the day, I am responsible for me. I shouldn't be
that's right.
looking to say, oh, because I had these kids. And a lot of people put that kind of, culturally we do that. We put that pressure on others to take care of us and make sure that we're provided for. And it's a village, yeah. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that you may have done along the way that could be working against you in the future. And now someone else has to carry that burden. And the other piece too is protecting what you've been building so that
That's right.
because we all have our day and you want to make sure that your family doesn't have to worry about things that you should have been addressing and the things that you've been working so hard for are not absorbed and taken away by the government or held up in some type of probate court. Like, it is
Mm,
super important, y'all, that we are really thinking about our whole self all the way through our entire life trajectory. So I
that's
love it.
right.
So this is Tipsy Tuesday and we're closing out. We have to give at least 2 practical tips for folks today. I mean, you've given us lots of nuggets, so much so that they're like, we want a part 2.
Gotcha. Two
Like,
practical
but
tips. So
practical
if you
tips.
are one of those who likes to over invest in your lifestyle, make sure that you are equally diligent about investing in your future. So for whatever, like if you spend $1, save two. And it sounds so like cliche or simple, but that's where people end up getting into trouble because the lifestyle choices that we make today do not outpace what our future planning should look like. And that's one of the biggest takeaways. So if you are going to indulge, just make sure that you sit down and get real with your numbers, but also for every time that you want to spend, look at how I can also take an active step in planning for my future, whether it's getting started whether it's saving double of what I spend.
I love that. So today we wanted to make sure people ended this conversation thinking differently about their financial preparedness. I believe we've done that versus just income. We wanted to have people walk away with some clear, actionable shifts that they could start to apply, which I think we've covered that. I think one of the things that I did want to talk about, and someone's like, give us 15 more minutes, and I'm gonna give you 5 more minutes. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Gwen, do you have 5 more minutes?
I do. Come on, Ayris. Anything for you.
It's kind of about the career paths that we choose. And is there any kind of correlation between the careers that we go into and how that ties into our long-term stability and our retirement readiness? So, for instance, you talked about there's jobs that have pensions. I really was not aware about jobs that have pensions until recently. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, a pension, that sounds great, right? Then you have jobs that offer 401ks and some that will match and some that don't. I'll be honest, early in my career, if I was making a contribution, I was not maximizing the match. And then I realized, I started calculating how much money I was leaving on the table. And so when I am, advising and working with emerging professionals, entry level professionals, and even mid career, I'm telling them to not always just chase the income and the role and the job. When they talk about that whole compensation, you're coming from HR, that whole compensation package really makes a big deal. I have jobs I have left, and when I leave, it's like all of a sudden I've got money that's coming with me that goes towards my retirement, right? And so, is there anything that you would advise with regards to kind of career choices and decisions and how that ties into our financial readiness and freedom?
Yeah. So back to something I said earlier, as it relates to if you're working for someone else, you touched up on
Mhm.
it. Make sure you understand your compensation package. Make sure that you are being intentional about looking at what an employer is offering you, whether it's stock options as part of your retirement plan, whether it's the ability for you to contribute money to your own retirement plan and have them matched, determining whether or not you need to be aggressive. So if your expenses are low and while you have time on your side, even if you're not really sure, I always say start with something, whether it's 1%, 2%, and always start out with a percentage, because that way you will at least give yourself a raise naturally without you having to take any type of action. What I will caution people against is to not feel the necessity to go out right of way and over contribute or go at the highest level, especially when you're
Yeah.
first starting out, because again, you have to understand that that money is not being taxed now, but when you go to withdraw it, how that will impact you. And if you're collecting Social Security, if you're collecting other forms of any type of income stream, the Social Security can be taxed. People are not aware of that. The only time it's not is if it's under $25,000 a year, but your Social Security income can be taxed at up to 85%. 85% of that Social Security income can be taxed based upon your other income avenues that are coming in your retirement. So don't feel so rushed about, I got to put in the max. If that's what you can do, you put in the max to what they will match. That would
Match.
be the
That,
advisement.
say that again. Put in the max to
The
what they will
max,
match as much as
yeah,
you
put
can.
in the max to what your employer will match. So if it's 6%, 5%, and that's something that you have to look at too. Like, not all employers are created equal when it comes to that. Like, some bear, that's the reason why I became a client first, because when I looked at that, I had to put in 8% for them to give me 2. I'm like,
Wow.
I'm going to go elsewhere. And I'm glad that I did, because it served me better. And sometimes the external avenues for you to also look at your retirement planning can give you sometimes bonuses of 10 to 12%, 20%. It just depends. Like I said, and that's the stuff that we find for people to make it beneficial for them to do that. Because you won't really get double digits from a defined contribution plan, especially initially starting out. I can tell you that. That I do know
Yeah.
from my 20 plus years. in that arena for sure. So start with something, even if it's small, and do a percentage. It'll naturally give you those increases that you desire.
Love it. So we have shared a bit about what you can do. We even touched on how you can do it. But I would say if you want more information to go deeper, to go further on your financial journey and how you start to apply the things that we covered today, I encourage you to feel free to reach out to me. But, I'm not the financial guru here. I mean, I am
She is.
self-practice. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. But you truly are. How do people get in touch with you?
Oh, you can email me. You can call me. I don't know. I guess I can't put my information out there. If you look up 300 Financial Group, there's a website there. You can get in contact with us. And depending upon where you are, we can work with all levels, just starting out, working class, and even high income earners. I do have some clients that are in that boat as well. And so we have resources for them as well. Their portfolios are managed a bit differently than what I would do one-on-one, but you would certainly, I am on Design for Retirement at Instagram and Facebook. So
Yes.
please feel free. We'll probably do like a follow-up and have that contact and link for sure. But like I said, I am available and I'm here to help. And I look forward to it. I really do. I have my sweet spot, but I'll work with folks who are definitely interested in making sure that they're securing their retirement futures for
I
sure.
love it. Thank you so, Aurora. And thank you
Thank
all who
you,
joined us.
Ayris.
Tipsy Tuesday.
Tuesday.